This really needs no introduction. 62% people thought that this navy and this yellow colorway would be a great addition to my next tutorial. So you guys chose it. This is the colorway that we're going with. These are the arm warmers. I know a lot of people have been anticipating this, so you got it. You got it. And we're going to jump right into it. So first thing you're going to do, you're going to need a tape measure. You're going to start at your wrist. If you need a friend or a buddy to hold this end down for you, you'll do that to decide on how far you want it to come down, and then you'll stretch it all the way to your neck area. This is about 31, which is about right. 31 inches for me makes about 57 rows, because you're going to continue all the way up this way for a series of rows, and mine is a total of 57, and then I add the neck afterwards. I want to give a shout out to all of my new subscribers. I want to thank you. You're getting me really close to that 500 subbies, as well as getting me halfway to monetization. So I am really excited about that. I welcome you guys. I welcome my returning subscribers as always. I'm not going to get into a lot today. I just want to jump right into the tutorial. So I thank you guys. Like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. And I hope you enjoy it. Okay guys, when you're ready, everything you see here is what you'll need to begin. You'll need about 3 skeins of a main color yarn. I used just over 2 skeins, which is why you need the 3rd skein. And this will be your main color. You're going to need a contrasting color, just 1 skein of that. And then this is just some leftover yarn that I had from a previous project. You'll also need stitch markers, a tape measure, scissors, and your 5mm crochet hook. I'm going to post a series of stitches and symbols that you'll need to recognize that I will post throughout this project. I'm going to do the standard size that I normally do, which I will post. If you want to adjust it accordingly to however you want it, you can do that as well. First thing we're going to do is create a chain. We're going to make a loop. I just simply cross over, pull this strand through that hole, push it through with my thumb, and pull it. And that's your loop. We're going to begin by chaining 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. This is going to be the width of the cuff. And then I do an extra stitch just to kind of lock everything in. So we're going to start a series of half double crochet stitches along this chain. Starting with our first one, we're going to yarn over and we're going to go into that first stitch. We're going to pull the yarn through, and you should have 3 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over again and pull through all 3 loops. That's your first half double crochet stitch. You're going to continue on, going into the second loop, pulling through, yarning over again, pulling through all 3, and that's your second half double crochet. And you're going to continue all the way until you get to the end. That's 14. You're going to chain 1 and turn your work. So that's your first row. You're going to begin the second row of the cuff by yarning over, and we're going to go into those back loops only. We're going to continue doing half double crochet stitches throughout the cuff on every row, but you're only going to do half double crochet stitches in the back loops. You're going to take your hook, you see this V, you're going to go into this left part of the V, taking the hook through, pull it through. You should have your 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over again, pull it through all 3, and there's your half double crochet stitch. Yarn over again, back loop of your 2nd stitch, and that's 2. And what you'll eventually see is that once you get enough rows going, some rows will be raised, some rows will be lowered, and that will give the effect of a ribbing. So I'm going to continue on through the end of this row, and I'll meet you once I get to the end of row 2. Okay, so I'm just about done with the end of row 2. That last stitch, chain 1, turn your work, and already you can see that 1 row is raised, 1 row is lowered. You're going to continue on with building rows for the cuff until you get to the number of rows for your desired width. So now we have our cuff with our 24 rows. Now, if you see here, you have a series of raised rows, and then you also have the bottom rows. If you see this tail here, that was the tail that started our chain in our first row. For the sake of this project, this represents the front. We're going to run a series of stitches along the top edge of this. So we're going to begin, and these will all be half double crochet stitches. For every stitch you see here, we're going to run 2 stitches in the bottom row, and we're going to position 1 stitch on the raised rows, if that makes sense. We're going to insert 2 half double crochet stitches in that first lowered row. 1, 2. The next row is a raised stitch. We're going to insert 1 stitch in there, 1 half double crochet stitch in there, and then we're going to continue inserting 2 half double crochet stitches in that next lowered section. You're going to work all along the top as such until you get to the end of that edge. And the last row is a raised row, so we're going to finish that off, and I like to put that final half double crochet stitch kind of close to the edge, but not too close, but close to the edge, kind of make it look even. Chain 1. Now before you turn your work, you're going to count out your stitches. I take a stitch marker and I insert it in that first stitch. That way I don't lose my count. So doing this project, because of the color change that we're going to add and the symmetry that you need to keep it in the middle, your stitch count is important. So that's our first stitch. We're going to count that as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, and 36. So we have 36 stitches along the top edge. And that's about what you need to start this off. 36 is what you want for, this is considered row 1. What you're going to do now, if you look, because we have 24 rows total in our cuff, and 12 of those rows are raised, it's easy to locate the center of your cuff. So we're going to count out 6 of these raised rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we're going to go into that next lowered row, and we're going to insert a stitch marker to represent the center of our cuff. And this is important because when we start building our stripes, we want to make sure that it's going to appear in the center of the sleeve when you fold it. And then once it's complete and you wear your arm warmers, that center stripe area will fall directly along the top part of your shoulder. You don't want it to fall slightly in the back. You don't want it to fall slightly in the front. You want it to fall directly along the top edge of your shoulder and your arm to give it that official tracksuit appearance. So now that we have marked our center, we're going to take more stitch markers. We're going to locate where we're going to place our stripes. And if you're new to this, you want to literally add stitch markers to all the places that you're going to do color changes. So again, because we have our center here and we have a total of 36 stitches, it shouldn't be hard trying to get to the center. And because that's our center and we know that that center, we put 2 stitches there, we're going to mark that off with the stitch markers. We're going to insert a stitch marker here, and we're going to insert one here. This will represent that space between the 2 stripes. And then right next to those 2 stitches on the left side, we're going to insert in the very next stitch a stitch marker there. And because I'm working with a yellow contrast color, I'm going to use yellow stitch markers, and that will directly let me know that it's time to do the color change in those 2 stitches. Same thing for the right side. We're going to go in that very next stitch, add our stitch marker colors to represent the color change that we're going to place there, and do that as so. Now, how do we know that that's even? Let's go back and count our stitches. And because we put that there, we know that that's stitch 1. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So there's 16 stitches before we get to where we have to do our first color change. So let's see what we got going on the other side. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Now, if this happens, here's a quick fix for that. Just simply unravel it, and we're going to add until we get the same amount that we had on the other side. Let me count again to make sure I don't add too less or too many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I know I need to add an additional 4 stitches to get it balanced out with the other side. So that's 1, 2, Sometimes it's a little tight towards the end of it, but it's okay. You just go in and squeeze that in there. That's 3, and another stitch makes 4. Chain 1. Now let's look again. And even though I've added more stitches than the beginning, it's okay because we know, because of the cuff marked, and we know our stripes, that when we fold this, it's going to hit directly in the center, and that's exactly what we want. We know we got 16 stitches here. Our pattern in the center represents 6 stitches that we have to account for going up the rows in the middle, and then we're going to have a balanced amount on each side. And then this should be 16. That's 16, that's 6, and then it should be 16 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. And now that we know we have it, we're going to turn our work, and we're going to begin the second row. The second row represents adding the color change. For row 2, you're going to begin working double crochet stitches. So you're going to go with that first stitch, go in those first 2 loops, bring up 2, yarn through, and that's your first double crochet stitch. And you're going to continue along until you get to the center. Okay, we're about to get to our first stitch marker, which indicates that it's time for a color change. So when you get to that last stitch before the stitch with the color change, you're going to yarn over, go in, you're going to yarn through 2, and then you're going to take our contrasting color, lay the tail in the front. I hold it down with my thumb. You're going to bring that yarn through. You're going to take the tail of the working yarn, or the blue, and you're going to hold both down with your thumb. You're going to yarn over again. You're going to run your hook through the stitch marker of the stitch with the new color for your first double crochet. And because this is the first one, you can go ahead and complete that one. Now what I do at this point is I remove that first stitch marker, and because I know the second one is going to be yellow as well, I'm going to remove that one. I'm going to pull my tails, not too tight, just taut enough to secure the stitches and make it clean. I'm going to go over again and create that second one, carrying all of our extra strands. For this one, I'm only going to go through 2 because I have to change colors again. So I'm going to take that yellow. Whenever you're working with color changes, you always want to keep your tails in front of you until you're done with the color change. So I'm going to put that down for now and call that my resting yarn. I'm going to pick up my blue again and yarn through. I'm going to yarn over, picking up all strands, and I'm going to go through that white. That white represents that space where there's no yellow. So I'm going to yarn through all of that, go through the first 2 loops, and then go through the second one. When you're changing colors, that first loop you can go ahead and complete without having to worry about interfering with color. And our yellow yarn is nice and tucked in. I'm going to pull it just a little bit more, but not too tight, because you don't want it to look bunched up. You just want it taut enough to clean. See how clean that is on the back? And that's your first stripe, beginning of your first stripe. Our second stitch, because it's a white stitch mark, is going to be another blue stitch. Because we know there's a color change coming up, we're only going to go through the first two. We'll pull that. And now I'm going to put the blue in the front. I'm going to pick up the yellow again, still holding on to that loose tail, if I can get it to where I can get control of it. We're going to yarn that yellow through our last two loops, yarn over again, run that through the stitch marker with the yellow, bring her up, yarn through the first one and then the second one, because that's our first color change stitch. And then we're gonna clean everything up by pulling just a little bit to get everything snug and secure. You can already see that it's starting to develop our pattern. It's clean on the back as well. We're going to continue on. I'm going to go ahead and remove these two stitch markers because I know what my pattern looks like now. So yarn over and you continue with that last yellow stitch. And when you get to this part, I'll pull it again. When you get to this part, we're done with that yellow for now. So we're going to move all of that to the back so it can be waiting on us when we turn our work. And we're going to continue along the rest of this edge with the blue. And yarn through, go into that next stitch. We're going to pull that just a little bit to secure it. And then we'll move on to complete this row. And another thing to note, once you get your contrasting color in, you don't need the extra stitch markers, so you can just put those aside. Okay, that's the end of row 2. We're going to chain 1 and we're going to turn our work. Going into row 3 is when we start our increased stitches. Now here's the thing, this is another part of this particular pattern where you can customize how wide you want the sleeve. But for the sake of this and for multiple people, we're only going to go up till about 62 stitches. If you want it more narrow and more fitted, you can do that as well. So at row 3, we're going to increase by 2 on each side. And I'll show you how to do that. And by the end of it, you should have a total of 42 stitches. So beginning with our first stitch on row 3, going to go into that first stitch. Create our first double crochet stitch. We're going to go into the second stitch, and this is where we're going to begin our increase. Create our first double crochet stitch, and we're going to go into that stitch again and add another double crochet stitch. And that's how you do an increase. So now we have 1, 2, 3 stitches. That was our first increase. You're going to skip a stitch by creating a single double crochet stitch or just one double crochet stitch in that next stitch. And then you're going to go into the following stitch, create 1 double crochet. You're going to go back into that stitch and create the second double crochet stitch. And then you're going to continue until you get to the center where you have to do your color changes again. And it's going to feel meticulous, but you guys wanted this. It's going to be meticulous, but you're going to have to do this color change on every row until you get to the last row. For this one, because of the measurements of my arm and how I want it to fit, by the time we get to the top of this sleeve, you're going to create 57 rows. If your arm is shorter or longer, depending on what you measure out, you may want to add or take away rows. But if you're following my pattern, you're going to do a total of 57 rows. And for each row, you're going to do a color change. And you're going to make sure on each side that you're doing an equal amount of stitches. So we're going to continue to work until we get to that center. Okay, so now that we're at the center again, I'm going to take that blue working yarn and lay it down in front of us. Give it a rest. That's why I call it the resting yarn, to give it a rest for a bit. To get to our last stitch. Make sure when you're ready to pick up that yellow that it actually sits over that blue strand so you can pick it up easier. So we're going to work that in. We'll yarn over. You see this bar here? We're going to go under that bar. We're going to go under that blue strand. And then we're going to go into that stitch, picking all of that up. Pull through. Yarn through 2. Pull our blue kind of taut to make sure it's nice and snug, and then we're going to continue off that stitch, and that cleans that up. And this is the wrong side, so it looks even better on the other side. And then we're going to continue on with the yellow color, still carrying that blue yarn. Going to go through our first 2 because now we have to rest the yellow strand and pick up our blue again. Yarn over, go through those, move that over, go through that stitch, yarn through 2, yarn through the next 2, pulling that taut. You're going to do this throughout each color change on each row. It just looks cleaner to pull the strands not too tight, just taut, to make sure you don't have any wonky stitches. And because of the way I have these evened out, 2, 2, and 2, that first stitch you can go ahead and complete the whole double crochet stitch. But because you're about to go into a color change, whenever you hit a stitch that's about to go into a color change, you can only work the first 2, and then you'll have to pull the new color through the last 2 loops like I'm about to do. Turn that blue now into our resting yarn. Pick up the yellow again, run that through, make sure it goes in that stitch, still holding on to the blue, pull it through, go through the first 2 and then the second 2. Okay, and now that I have that, I'm going to move that yellow to the back so it'll be waiting on me when I get to the other side. And then I'm going to finish off that stitch. I'm going to pull, not too hard, but just enough to where it secures it. And then I'm going to finish off the rest of this row. So I did my increase in that stitch, and then I skipped a stitch and did a single double crochet. And then I'm going to add an increase inside of the second to last stitch. And then finish it off by adding my last double crochet to this row, chain off, turn my work. That's the end of row 3. And if you're following the pattern for the size I'm making, you should have a total of 42 rows. Let's make sure and that they're even on each side. You may have to do this for the next few rows until you get the hang of it. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. We know that that's our 6th, but we're not counting that. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So we know that it's balanced out. We have 18 on this side now. We have 18 on this side now because we added increases. 18 plus 18 is 36. If you add the 6 that we have in the middle, that's a total of 42 rows. Beginning for row 4, we're going to add increases in every other stitch. And you should have a total of 58 stitches. So it's going to be 26 on this side, 26 on that side. That's a total of 52 stitches. And then if you add the 6 in the middle, that's a total of 58 stitches. So we're going to begin that for row 4. And because we're doing more increases, we're going to start off increasing in that second stitch. That's 1 double crochet. I'm going to go back in that same stitch and add another double crochet, and that's an increase. And then in the next stitch, single crochet, or single double, well, 1 double crochet. I don't want to get it mixed up with the single crochet stitch when I say single crochet. All of the stitches for this piece is going to be completed in double crochet stitches. So when you hear me say single crochet, I'm only referring to 1 double crochet stitch inside of a stitch, if that makes sense. I don't want to confuse anyone. So because we did a single double crochet stitch here, we're going to go into this next stitch and add 2 double crochet stitches. 1, go back in the same stitch, 2. And you're going to go through each stitch, every other stitch. You're going to have single stitches, then double stitches, then single stitches, then you're going to go 1 stitch, then 2 stitches, then 1, and so on until you get to the center. And because I just did 2 double crochets in that stitch, the next one is going to be just 1 stitch in that. 1, and then 2, and then 1, and then 2, and so on and so on. I want to show you this. Even though we've created increased stitches in every other stitch, you don't want to add an increase into that last stitch next to the color change because you don't want to affect the stitch. You can add an increase there, and then inside of that last stitch before the color change, you just want to add a single one, a single double crochet stitch, like so. And because we know we're about to color change, we're going to yarn through the first 2 loops and leave that last 2 on our hook. We're going to put that blue yarn down for now. Make sure that the yellow goes over the blue. Yarn through, yarn over. You gotta get rid of that bar. We're gonna go under the bar, we're gonna go under that blue stitch, and then we're gonna add it all inside that first yellow stitch. Pull through all strands, go through the first 2, and then the second 2, and that's our first stitch. And then we're going to continue along the edge. Go through our color change, and then we'll complete the last set of alternate stitches for this side, increasing in every other stitch. And when you get to that last stitch, which is an increase stitch, finish off the row. Now, because we're doing a total of 58 stitches, this is row 4, we should have 28 stitches on each row. So after you finish that row and you chain 1, you're going to turn your work. But let's make sure that we have the right amount. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. We're going to skip over our 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. Okay, so as long as we have equal amount on each side, it shouldn't matter too much, even though it's more stitches on this row than we need. And when that happens, here's how we'll fix it. Because we have 27 on each side, that's a total of 54 plus 6. That's 66 stitches total. Going into row 5, we need to increase for a total of 62. And because I already have 60 for row 4, sometimes when you alternate, depending on where you start, that can throw off your stitch count. And that's fine. But you want to make sure for each row you have the desired amount of stitches that you need to create the shape. So going into row 5, I'm only going to increase on each side once. I'm going to do that increase in that second stitch. And then I'll work all along this first side until I get to my center for the color change. Okay, so now we're back at the center right before I go into that last stitch and do the color change. I want to make sure that I have the amount of stitches I need to equal 62. Now that I counted the stitches on this first side, I have a total of 28 stitches. And then you have your 6 in the middle. And then on this second side, I should have a total of 28 stitches. So 28 plus 28 is 56. And if you add the 6 in the middle, 56 plus 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62 is what we need to complete row 5. Okay, so now that we're about to do row 6, what that means for row 6 is we are no longer doing increases. We are now at the widest part that we're going to create for this arm warmer. So at row 6, you're going to continue, and then for every row until you get to row 22, which is the last row that you're going to do for 62 stitches, I'm going to meet you back for the decrease for row 23. Okay, everyone, we're back. I've just completed rows 7 through 22. I've completed on this side of the row 28 stitches. We have our pattern of 6 stitches in the center, and I've completed the 28 stitches on this side. 28 and 28 is 56 plus 6 is 62. So we've been consistent from rows 6 through 22. We will now begin row 23 by decreasing rows, and this decrease is going to occur with every other row. To make it easier, we know that because our tail is hanging down on the lower left bottom, and we've marked our center with a stitch marker, we know that this is the front. The decrease will occur on the front of the sleeve. You'll create stitches along that following even row in the same amount that you just decreased on the front. And then when you turn your work back to the front, it'll be odd numbers, and you'll decreasing from there. Every row from row 23 on up to row 45 will be a decrease, and it's just going to continue to get smaller and smaller until you get to row 45. So to begin row 23, which is our first decrease row, I'm going to start at the end. You're going to yarn over. You're going to go through that first stitch, pull through, and you're going to go through the first 2 loops only. Yarn over, going through the first 2 loops. Then you're going to yarn over a second time and go through the next stitch. Pull through, and now you see you have 4 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over, go through the first 2 loops to bring you back to a total of 3 loops. From there, you're going to yarn over a third time, pull through all 3 loops. And that's how you do your first decrease. You'll only have to do this on each end of the row for every row that you have to decrease, which is every odd number row, which would be your front. So I'm going to continue to work this row, completing my second decrease at the end of row 23, and then I'll continue on from rows 24 until I get to the final decrease row of row 45, and I'll see you back then. Okay, we have finally reached row 45, and it's just like the other decrease rows. I'm going to start, and then I'm going to do my decrease into the second stitch, and I will continue along the row until I get to the center. I'm just about towards the end of row 45, and I'm going to do that final decrease. Like so. Plus it's clean. Look how straight that is. So I'm going to chain 1, turn my work, and there you have it. That is the end of row 45. Now let's recap. As I stated previously, in the cuff area, this is the part where you can customize it to how fitted or how loose you would like it on your wrist. I have a tiny wrist, but I kind of like that loose feel. So that's why I made it loose like that. If you don't want it this wide and you just want it more narrow, you can customize the stitches to stay constant as you work your way up. So instead of this wide part, if you just want it like a simple sleeve, your stitches will pretty much be the same. And then once you get to a certain point, you can slightly go a few stitches wider. That way you can have that movement in the sleeve area, which you'll need, because once you get to the armpit area, you don't want to have it as narrow as you have it down by the wrist. So just like a typical sleeve, you want to gradually go a little wider. Now that we're going into the last few rows, which would be rows 46 through 57, this is another area of the pattern that is customizable. After row 45, this is where you can decide based on your own measurements if you need it just a little shorter or just a few rows longer. Because from 46 on up, all of the stitch rows in the stitch count is the same. So once you complete the final and last row, and in my case that will be row 57, we will resume for the last and final steps. Okay, so the last and final steps of completing our arm warmers will be connecting the sleeves, and with the magic of editing, I've already prepared the other sleeve ahead. The final steps of these sleeves will be connecting these sides together, and then we'll join them at the very top. So we will join the sides with our trusty stitch markers. And this is why I said you need plenty of them, because this is what you're going to do first. You're going to attach the stitch markers almost like safety pins. And basically for now, you're going to work stitch markers all the way up the length of the arm, but you want to leave a little bit of opening because you're going to try it on to see if the fit is okay. What I do in this case, so I know that both sleeves are going to match, you see these sections here? If you can't see these sections, you can go by the rows. I'm going to count off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, because when I've made these previously, that's about how much room I've allowed for the rest of the opening. So you see here, I've left a little opening because that's how I'm going to get my head over it and through the arm area. And this is the part that we're going to sew up. I'm going to do this with the other one, and I'll show you what to do next. So now that I have connected the edges of both sleeves, I'm going to turn to the top area, and this is probably going to be a customizable area as well, but for me, I'm going to overlap these just for the sake now to connect them to try on. And I'm going to add a couple here so they don't pop out, because sometimes they do. That's what I love about these stitch markers, because it's almost like a temporary basting. This part is going to go over your head. This area up in here is how it's going to fall over your shoulders. Okay, so as you see, I tried it on. It's looking pretty good. Stitch markers are going to be removed. I'm going to sew up the seams on both sides. We're going to finish off the neck, but as of now, this lets me know that it fits pretty good. You have that extra room there, which is why you have to stop the seam somewhere before you get to the armpit area, and you will only know what feels right by adjusting the stitch markers. But this is why we use the stitch markers, because it's kind of like a basting. And once you try it on, you'll know from there if you need to move up a bit or if you need to kind of remove a couple and just lower where you're going to put the seam. But the neck is pretty good. All I have to do is connect that like I do. Finish off the ribbing up at the top, and this is pretty much it. Now, if you need more room for your neck, or if you just want a wider neck, this is what you're going to do. You're going to take stitch markers and you're going to link them however many you need for the fit you'll need. You'll link them like so. You leave however many you attach. You leave the ends open so you can attach those to the edges like I'm doing here, and you do that all around the neck. And that's a way that if you need to make it wider, or you just desire it to be wider, this is how you'll do that. And to get that extra, you'll chain that, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that when the time comes. But I've tried it on and it's where it needs to be. I can start stitching it up. So, all right, as you see here, I sewed up both seams of both sleeves. The next thing we're going to do is stitch these two arms together. I'm going to keep that connected in the back so it doesn't get twisted up. And we're going to connect here. And then we'll create our rib neck from there. First thing you're going to do is start off creating a chain. Now let's say you wanted about 2 inches. Then you're just going to accommodate the number of stitches, and you'll attach it by doing a slip knot like that. And from here, you begin your chain. But like I mentioned before, I'm just going to connect them together because this is the fit that's always worked best for me. So now that I have them connected, I'm going to secure them with a slip stitch, and then I'm going to proceed to chain 8 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now 8 chains for me will sit about maybe 75% of my neck, maybe leaving half an inch at the very top because I don't want it to hit right up under my chin, but I did want it to cover most of my chin. So in my case, 8 stitches is right about the height that I want my neckline. If you want to go higher, you can do so. It's completely up to you to customize this. If you even want to do a turtleneck, then however it sits under your neck, you just double the stitches by 2 so you can turn it over, and that's how you create how high you want it. So to begin our row, we're going to go along the edge of this chain with a series of half double crochet stitches. Going to yarn over. You're going to go into that first stitch. That's your first half double crochet stitch. I'm going to continue along the edge of the chain until we get to this base down here, and then I will show you what we do next, because that's going to be important as well in order to make sure this fits. You want to always make sure as you're creating, especially at the neckline, you want to make sure that you keep a continuous count of your stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7 and 8. Okay, so you want to make sure if you're doing 8 stitches, 12 stitches, however many stitches that you do, you always want to make sure as you go along to frequently count your stitches to make sure that it's going to be even at the top edge, or it'll kind of dip in. We definitely don't want that. So now that you have all the stitches in your first row, you're going to attach them, because that's where we attached it. You're going to attach it in that next stitch, and this is always slip stitch. Tug it just a little bit to close out any gaping holes. I'm going to touch that up at the end, because the first row is always kind of weird. After you attach it in that first stitch, you're going to go into the next stitch with another slip stitch and not pull as much. And as you go around the edge of the neck, you want to pull it just so you don't have any gaping holes, but you don't want to pull it too tight, because what will happen is it'll eventually gather, and then you'll end up with an effect of a ribbing that fans out at the top edge instead of kind of gathers in like we know an attractive ribbing is supposed to do. You see how it spreads at the bottom and kind of closes in at the top? That's what you want to do. So now that I've inserted my stitch into that second chain, you know that we're going to go into the back loops only. We're going to yarn over. We're going to go into that first stitch. I don't know if you guys can hear my cat in the back, but he goes out every morning like he has a job to go to. And then sometime after a few hours, he comes back for lunch. Sometimes he'll knock at the door, i.e. scratch at the door. And then other times he'll scream like he's doing now. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but he's screaming at the door. I'm gonna try to finish this row before I let him in, because he'll do that 3 or 4 more times today. Actually, he let himself in. You hungry? You hungry? You ready for lunch? So you can go back to work? You on your lunch break? Okay. Okay, so once you get to the end, you go into that last chain. Chain 1 and turn our work. And you'll continue to do that along the entire edge And once I get towards the end, I'll be back to show you what we do next. Okay guys, I am back, and I actually went on ahead and completed it. I felt like the tutorial's getting pretty long. Basically all I did was just go around the neckline and complete the ribbing. And when I got to the other side where it will separate, I did the same thing like I did on the front. I overlapped it, and then I just connected the edge stitches together so I can continue on with the ribbing. And then once I got both sides of the ribbing, I just made a seam. Actually, this is the end that I did. I just made a seam and joined them together. And any stray strands of yarn, I took a needle and thread to kind of secure them so they wouldn't fray after wear. And there you have it. Fresh new set of arm warmers. That's the end of the video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed that. It takes a lot of work to put these tutorials together. There are a lot of moving parts. And once again, I thank you all for tuning in. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you do not miss out on future videos. Again, I thank you very much for all of your support, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.